Some not such good news just hitting the lines right now. South Africa's Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan has said the country's economic growth rate will not reach 2.7% that had been projected for this year. Speaking at an investment conference, Gordhan also said that despite South Africa holding elections next year, this will not lead to government spending irresponsibly.
Well, some news coming in today is that, or rather on Friday last week, was that the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa has made its determinations on the future of both mobile as well as fixed termination rates for the next 3 years. Now, based on a review of industry conditions, the body has decided to lower them. Joining us now on the line to give us the company's reaction to the decision is Alan Craig from SALC. Alan, thanks so much for joining us. Just your immediate reaction to the announcement made by ICASA on Friday. I understand that it will have a positive benefit for the likes of SALC.
Look, it'll have a benefit for any small player in the market. It will certainly make them put them in a much better position to compete on a sustainable basis. I was quite surprised. The regulations from ICASA were certainly aggressive, but I think they were long overdue. So they had to be aggressive now, and they were. And I am a critic. I have been a critic of ICASA, but I have to say that this time they've been very efficient and very constructive, and they've done the job quickly.
Alan, just in the commentary that you published today in an email, you mentioned that the asymmetry was lower than what was hoped for. Let's just touch on the asymmetry. What exactly does that mean, and why was it lower than what you hoped for?
Well, asymmetry is what small players get from big players when they start their businesses. Now, Vodacom and MTN enjoyed a R1 asymmetry for 15 years or so. So it's not often a percentage. The percentage is aggressive right now. That's true. 19 cents asymmetry to start with is good. We would have liked a bit more, but I think that on balance, the whole way that ICASA published the regulations are good. And whilst we might want to criticise this bit or that, but the fact of the matter is that I think it's a pretty good regulation.
Alan, when we chatted when you were in the studio, you did tell us that the decision by your parent in Saudi Arabia on whether or not to release the funds that it had committed to you was dependent on the way that regulations developed. Now, is this a step in the right direction?
Absolutely, 100% step in the right direction. So I've been in touch with them the entire weekend, which is why we didn't really want to make any comment before the weekend. So I think, they appreciate and recognise the move by ICASA, and investment-wise from them, certainly, it makes a big difference. So
how many hundreds of millions in new funding will now be released for you?
Well, remember, they're still releasing the funding they announced earlier in the year, and the release of that funding was, subject to seeing what happens from the ICASA process. So I would say it's fair to say that funding is certainly intact, and that additional funding, depending on how we perform, might be necessary going forward.
Alan, you also believe that this is the first regulatory step in the South African market in order to normalize the telecoms industry, and you believe that there is a need for much more competition. How so?
Well, the only way you're ever going to get prices down is through competitors trying to get market share, and because the only way they can get market share is through price, and that's why you introduce third and fourth players, is for them to try, fight for market share and bring prices down. But they're coming from a sort of a standing start, and they need help, just like Vodacom and MTN needed help in 1994. So, this is the first aggressive step for SALC and for Jocko Mobile. So I think it just gives them a much better chance to attack the market share even more fiercely and, rip those prices down.
The market reacted in a very interesting way this morning. Investors pushing down the price of Vodacom by 5.5%. MTN is down at the moment by 3.25%. On the flip side, Telkom is up 4.5%. Are you surprised, or would you have anticipated this?
No, that's exactly what, that's part of balancing the market. Telkom is clearly undervalued, and part of the reason that it's undervalued is that it has been on the wrong side of symmetry for, too long, at least in my view. And a lot of that has just been corrected. Well, it's not fun. It's got to go through hearings and so on, but what ICASA have done is, to a large extent, corrected a market which needs correction some 5 years ago, really.
Alan, I guess the big question for South African consumers like myself is, what's the benefit for us? Will there be a reduction in call rates in South Africa?
Well, as I've said, the only way call rates have come down quite a lot in the last year. So we we shouldn't forget that. And it's been due to competitor activity. You know, nothing has happened since Cell C and Telkom Mobile aggressively started attacking prices. What these regulations from ICASA mean is that they can continue to do so on a sustainable basis. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. So, you know, as they keep taking market share away from MTN and Vodacom, there will be a point, and I think we've already seen that Vodacom and MTN react and bring their own prices down. So that's how the consumer benefits.
Just to close off with, Alan, a stock that we don't normally talk about when we focusing on telecoms is Blue Label. And that share was very heavily traded today. Is there going to be an impact on a business like that as well?
Well, the thing with Blue Label is that, you know, they're one of our biggest distributors, and so, you know, the more successful we are, the more successful they are, or vice versa, whichever way you look at it. So, you know, putting us into a much more competitive position and a much more sustainably competitive position is very good news for a company like Blue Label.
Well, thank you so much, Alan. That was Alan Craig from Cell C.